So, my next guest was only 11 months old when she suffered severe burns to her body following an accident at home. But Itumeleng Sekhu hasn't let her difficult start in life become the end of her story. Rather, she's used it to inspire others. Itumeleng's self-published autobiographical book, What Do You See?, details her remarkable story and tells the story of her as a young woman who's had to tackle and face adversities in her life, and also to question what she feels are misguided notions about herself as somebody that other people would label as disabled. She's also been had to question ideas of beauty, relationships, and as we close off Women's Day, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by this inspirational, bold, powerful young woman. Itumeleng Sekhu, so lovely to have you on the line. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm really, really good. I'm really good. And I'm all the better for you being on the end of the line. And a belated Happy Women's Day to you.
Oh, thank you so much. And absolutely happy belated Women's Month to you too.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. So listen, the title of the book, What Do You See? It's quite a question, isn't it? Did you pick that title on purpose? It's very direct. The reader is being asked a very direct question. Why did you go with that for the title of your memoir?
You know what? My editor actually chose the title of the book, but how she explained it to me was, you see, when people read the story, they will be asking themselves questions about their own lives. And because of that, it was important to even ask that question of, what is it that you see when you read my story? But not just in my life, but also in your life. Because my story talks a lot about internal wounds that I had to battle with as a young girl, but also as a young woman trying to find my own identity. And it was important that when people read the story, that they ask themselves, what is it that they see from this young girl that got burned when she was 11 months old to this young woman that started rising up and saying that, you know what, I'm not going to allow anything to break me down. And that was important for me, to just change people's lives without having to say it.
It's an incredible story, and just tell us, if you will, how the accident happened when you were 11 months old. It was an accident at home, I understand.
Yes, I was sleeping on the bed, and this was in 1990. So in 1989, so there was no electricity, and we were using candles at the time. And while I was sleeping, the candle fell over the bed, and it started catching the blankets and then my dress. I was wearing a pink dress that day, and then my body. My mom and her brothers, they were in the next room, but because I didn't cry, they couldn't identify anything happening. And then when my mom started smelling the smoke, that's when she started running to the bedroom. She found me burning on the bed. When she lifted me up from the bed, my right hand was literally dripping off. And it was just like falling apart. My fingers were also falling apart. My right ear was completely burned. So when I got to the hospital, my right ear was completely burnt off. My right hand there were ashes there. My fingers were just falling apart. So I lost my right hand, obviously, and then 4 fingers on my left hand. My right ear was completely burnt off. My scalp and my head bones were showing. My mouth was completely torn apart. My nose as well. So I couldn't breathe for a very, very long time. And thus I was in a coma for 3 months, fighting for my life, really, because my lungs were just so full of the smoke from that fire. It was a 70 degrees fire, in that moment. And for the fact that I didn't cry, I think that's why I got burned so severely, because no one could hear and know what was going on because I was so silent within that turmoil.
Itumeleng, it's incredible to hear you describing those injuries, and it almost sounds like it was happening to another person, and you think of how long ago, but obviously it happened to you, and I want to talk about how it's affected you and the life that you lead, but I also want to talk about your family and how a trauma like that affects a family. I mean, what on earth was your mother's reaction? You said that her brothers were there also. What was your family's response to such a trauma?
And in this case, I just like to talk about my mom. My mom, she was traumatized. In actual fact, there's a part within my book where I talk about how she was even pleading with God to just let the car that was rushing us to hospital to just roll over so that we could just die. She just felt like, our lives were not worth it anymore, and she just wanted us to just die, but even then, when she saw that there was hope, from the coma and so on, she started praying a different prayer, and her prayer was, God, please save my daughter, but more than that, just help me become a strong mother for her. And my mom at that time, she was a teacher, and she resigned from teaching to look after me 24/7. So now it was also affecting my siblings as well that came before me, because when I got burned, I was the fourth child. So there were 3 children before me, but my mom sacrificed her income for me, but more than that, she was so supportive. And I remember that my mom would literally just do anything for me. When they say that a child is the favorite within the family, my mom has always treated me like that. And for us as a family, we understand why. It's because she's always felt like, because I've gone through so much, she just wants me to just feel loved. And that is what I cherish about my mom, because she's never made me feel less beautiful than I actually feel right now. But she's also treated me like a normal child, For instance, she'll make me wash the dishes, she'll make me clean the house, So she will also just split the chores between the siblings and not make me feel like you are not going to do this because you can't do that. And that is also one thing that I will always cherish and love about my mom, because she's always treated me like there's nothing that you cannot do, but I will always love you. When you cry, I will cry with you. When you're hurting, I will hurt with you, simply because I know what you've been through, and I love you, and I want you to know that there is someone here that loves you unconditionally.
Itumeleng, I wonder if you've ever had a conversation with your mother about perhaps her feelings of guilt. Has that ever come up? Has that ever been a conversation that you two have had, where you've had to say to her, Mom, you don't need to feel guilty, or she's expressed feelings of guilt or responsibility for what happened?
Mm-hmm. Look, my mom has always blamed herself for what happened to me for many, many years. And in 2007, when I became a born-again Christian, I said to my mom that, Mom, because I now understand why the fire happened to me, I want you to know that this was out of your control anyway, that whether you were strong enough to prevent the fire from happening, the fire was going to happen, whether you were there or not. And for me, it's important that my mom realizes, and I'm not sure if she still feels guilty, but I know that I always remind her that that everything happens for a reason. And I know that it's so cliche to say that, but in my case, it was for a certain purpose, you know, and and I don't know where my life would have been if I actually have never gone through what I did when I was 11 months old. And that for me means that my life was preordained even when I was such a little baby, you know. So, so I've always said to my mom that what happens to me happened for a reason, and it can never ever be her fault because, you know, she would have never have had the power to prevent the fire from happening.
Wow, it must take. I mean, it takes a lot of reflection and faith and understanding to get to that point, I think. Let's talk about your childhood. How was your childhood? Because obviously children can be very, very cruel. What was school like for you?
School. You know, I went to school at the age of 5. And it wasn't so hard for me. I think it started becoming hard when I started primary school, and I was around 9 years old, 10 years old, and children would tease me about how I look like. You know, they would call me different names. So they would call me franchise names, meaty names, burnt chicken. You know, and that is what crippled my self-esteem really, because it said to me in that moment that society would never accept you because of how you look like, you know, especially because you don't look like a normal human being. I mean, like, come on. You don't even have hands, you don't have fingers, you know, your face is scarred, and people don't look like you. And that crippled my self-esteem in a sense that it said to me in that moment that no matter what I do, I will never be normal.
I read an interview with you where you said that before the age of 9, you had no idea that you were burnt.
Oh, absolutely. I thought I was the most prettiest girl on earth, you know. And I had absolutely no idea. And simply because no one made me aware that I was different to the people around me. But immediately when I went to school, you know, people were like, hey, you are actually different.
You're different, yeah.
You're scary, you are ugly, and you will never be beautiful, you know, and that is what crippled my self-esteem.
For you then, when that awful, you know, the teenage period that we all go through when we feel awkward and we're trying to aspire to ideals of beauty that perhaps we don't really understand and perhaps aren't particularly healthy for us anyway, what was your idea of what beautiful meant while you were going through your adolescence?
For me, beauty was defined by what the media said, you know, and that was skinny, you know, a well stood up nose, you know, fair skin with no pimples, nothing like that, you know, long hair, long straight hair, you know, and I had none of that, you know, and especially now you now also have to face the things that you don't even have. I mean, you know, when I was a teenager, and people started putting on like manicures, you know, and so on. And now you're thinking, okay, but I'll never have a manicure because I don't have fingers.
Yeah.
You know? And it was matters like that that just made me feel like I will never, ever be beautiful. You know, I'm not skinny at all. You know, I don't have fair skin. Forget about pimples. 90% of my face is scarred, you know. So it's not something that I can just wash off from, you know, some soap or something, but I'm scarred for life. And that for me defined beauty, but it also made me believe that I'll never ever be beautiful. But more than that, I'll never ever feel beautiful.
So how were you able to get past that point? You said in an interview recently, outward appearances will always be the first thing people look at. I had to get to a point in my life where I wasn't going to allow that to stop me from living my life to the fullest. How did you get to that point?
When I found my identity, and I found my identity in my spirituality. And that's when my life actually started changing, because when I started my relationship with Christ, and then I found out what my purpose was, that's when I started finding my own beauty. And when I found my own beauty, I found my purpose. And when I found my purpose, I found a sense of being. And because of that, I actually started seeing my own beauty within me that started resonating externally, And then I started being more vibrant, and my personality really started radiating from within me. And when that started happening, I actually started believing that, what, there is a place for me here on earth, simply because more than anything, I'm actually here to help people with their own scars, because so many people have got scars within them. And they hide them, with a lot of things. But because my scars are external, I just have to get to a point in my life where I start loving my own scars because of what my scars represent, and they represent a woman who have stood up and literally said that, what, I will not allow these scars to define my beauty, but in actual fact, I will actually start defining my beauty through my scars. And that's when I started loving myself, really. And I think when you start loving yourself, there's a sense of, self-esteem. There's a sense of confidence that just starts radiating from within you. And your soul just starts blossoming from your mind, from your body, from the way you talk, from the way you walk, and literally it just changes everything about you. And that's how I found my own beauty. And because of that, I knew that, there's a huge place and purpose for me right here.
Itumeleng, we are told as children, as girl children, right until we sort of hit our adolescence and past then, that what men think of us is terribly, terribly important. That our beauty is often to be defined by a man. That once we are grown, once we have found our male partner, if that is if that is where we choose to be, then we will be complete. Which of course plays into so much of the negative body image and negative self-talk that we have as women, full stop. For you, what was that? What have your relationships been like, and how have you managed to avoid, if you have, getting into unhealthy relationships? And if you have been in those unhealthy relationships, which I think you talk about a little bit in the book, how have you managed to come through, and how do you know now when you found a relationship that is healthy for you, that makes you feel the most beautiful woman on earth?
You know what? I believe in a saying that you attract who you are, And before I started finding my sense of worth, because I was so desperate for love by anything and anyone, really, I dated anybody that could say to me, I want to be in a relationship with you. And that was defined in a sense that it made me feel wanted, But the problem was because I had a low self-esteem, because I didn't find my own beauty, because I didn't love myself, I was constantly in toxic relationships because these people never actually loved me. They just wanted to be in a relationship with me, but they were not confident themselves to handle a woman like me. But now that I've found my worth, now that I've found me, and now that I've found my identity, I tend to attract stronger men. And as much as I don't have time really, at the moment to be in a relationship, but I found that the type of men that I attract now are stronger men who are more confident in who they are, men who have found their own identity, men who are strong, not just in their physical body, but in their own emotions as well, in their careers and so on. And that just then says to me that you will always attract who you are and not what you want. So what you want in a man is unfortunately what you need to be first, and that is the perfect way that I can put it, that women need to love themselves first before they even think of another being loving them. Because if you don't love yourself, it's so unfortunate that you'll always attract someone who does not love themselves as well. And they will then project that, into your life. And that then becomes a toxic relationship, because then you attract toxic things, within your life and from your life and from this guy who himself is also toxic. If you are broken, basically, you will attract another broken being.
Yeah. Indeed. How do you deal, Itumeleng, with children? Because children are, as they are, we always say out of the mouths of babes, and obviously children are very questioning. They're very inquisitive. Do they sort of say to you, "Oh, why do you look like that?" Or "Where you don't have a hand like I've got a hand?" Or what will they say to you? And how do you respond and help them understand why you look slightly different to them?
I actually love children, and I've always loved children, even when my self-esteem was so low, simply because, children will always come, and because they're so inquisitive and they just want to know everything, they'll ask you questions like, "So why is your face like that? Why don't you have fingers? Or why don't you have a hand? Why are you so different from the rest of us?" And for me, it's important that I get someone like that, simply because I'd rather have someone ask me questions than someone who stares. I think staring is so rude, and I've had to grow up with people staring at me and making me feel uncomfortable. But when someone asks you questions, you can see that they are actually willing to understand, but also more than that, they're actually willing to treat you like a normal human being who has just gone through something, in their lives. And that is so important.
Yours is a remarkable story, and I'm absolutely delighted that you were able to share it with us in part on the show this evening. The book is called What Do You See? Itumeleng Sekhu, thank you so much for spending time with us here on Late Nights, and a happy rest of Women's Month to you.
Thank you so much.